Welcome to the JJ Meets World podcast. I am your host with the most, JJ Gordon. My producer is Tucker Lucas, and this is a podcast where I am trying to meet every single person in the world and have a conversation with them. Today, I get to have a conversation with Brent Brandt about musicals, and Tucker and I talk about the most embarrassing compliment I've ever received in my entire life. All of this and so much more on today's episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
When I was in high school, I did a couple of musicals. I was in Oliver and the Music Man. In the Music Man, I got the part of Mayor Shin, which is a great role and has absolutely no solo singing time. He's just a part of the chorus numbers, and not even every chorus number for that matter of fact. So I don't have a great singing voice, but for some reason, when I was in Oliver, they gave me a song that I sang with a young woman named Allie Shower. We were the owners of a funeral home, and we were asking, we were singing about how, like, if you eat too much, you'll die, and then you see us. If you covet too much, you'll die, and then you'll see us. It's a really morbid tune at the beginning of the show. And singing on stage was without a doubt the scariest thing that I've ever done. And I remember a girl that I was kind of jonesing for at the time. After one of the shows, like, you did so well. I was ready for you to be a failure, and you weren't. And I guess
that's encouraging.
That's one of the nicest compliments I've ever received. I was expecting you to be a failure, but you weren't. Oh, okay. Thank you. And it's always kind of put this place in the back of my head about how you compliment somebody when you don't know exactly what to say. So if you're out of your element, so for example, if I saw someone who had an amazing game, like a sports game, let's call it football, one of the most popular of the sports is, and you had a great sports game, I would say, congratulations, you guys did really well, and you did your job perfectly, because it's a whole team that has to make it happen. And it would be that awkward, and they would say, okay, thanks. You're not supposed to be in the locker room. And be like, oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to find out if Domino's was going to throw away the rest of the pizzas from the concession stand, and I ended up in here. But you guys have a great day. And I always find compliments, they make me uncomfortable to some extent, but I like getting them.
Right. They feel good, but it's like, how do I respond correctly? Because if I merely respond with a compliment back, it can seem disingenuous, right? Like, the reason I'm giving you the compliment is because you gave me one. And at the same time, it can be weird to just take the compliment and eat it up and go, oh, thanks for that, and then leave, right? Just to walk away. So anytime I do receive a compliment, and it's fairly rare when it happens, but when it happens, I try to say, oh, thank you very much for saying that. That means a lot to me. And that typically gets me over that awkward moment of the compliment.
Yeah, the awkward compliment moment. That is,
you know what's weird? It's like the older I get, I have more fun at Christmas giving people presents than getting them.
Oh, without a doubt.
And so it's kind of like that. Like, I actually really love paying compliments to people. I never give one that I don't mean. And I really enjoy a moment where, say, like, if a member of my theater company does something really well, I love having the opportunity to tell them, hey, you did something fantastic, and I want you to know that I saw you do it and it was fantastic. But if they were to say it to me, I would go, thanks, I gotta go. Thank you.
My mom used to call it gratification by proxy. She used to love to watch me do something and get a bunch of compliments because she was proud of it, because she felt that she had a hand in creating that. So she kind of felt a little ownership over some of those compliments.
Good job, Patty.
Yep, right, exactly. And as I get older, I find I do that with more and more people. So when I have a friend, even if they're older than me and they do something, I'm like, good for them. I'm so excited for them. And I think one of the worst character flaws a person can have is to have instant jealousy when somebody else has good news or somebody else deserves a compliment. I have a couple of friends who, if I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, I'm going to Disneyland, they're like, Disney World's way better. And they just find that way to tear you down in some way, shape, or form. In fact, a couple of the guests who've been on this show have been those type of people who feel they need to tear you down. Today, our guest today, though, is the exact opposite of that. I've known Brent Brandt for only a couple of years, and he's instantly become one of my ultimate favorite people. You can go back to the episode in the first 10 of JJ Meets World called Brent Brandt Does Not Microwave His Meat. And today's episode, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of musicals, musical theater, musicals on Broadway, musicals in movies. It's an everywhere discussion, and this is probably the quietest that Tucker has ever been in an episode of JJ Meets World, just because it's outside your wheelhouse.
Well, and that's totally okay, man. I mean, I'm the co-host and producer. I'm not the tip of the spear here, and I am more than happy to sit back and listen to you chums talk about musical theater. I think the most exposure to musical theater I have ever had in my life is every time I've been on a road trip with JJ, and he was the one driving, because the rule, and it should be the rule, is the person who's driving gets to pick what is playing on the radio. Absolutely, I have no argument with that. But at the time, I didn't have any AirPods to put in, so I could drown it out. So I got to listen to musicals, and I got to listen to JJ sing musicals.
Yep.
It was fun.
We also listened to that one Ben Folds and William Shatner collabo, Driving to Your Grandma's. Remember that album?
Yeah, you shiv me, JJ, and I have to shiv you back a little bit.
Yep. Listen, today's episode, I think if you're listening to this on Spotify, which I know quite a few of you are, no big deal. I mean, maybe we'll sign a big old deal like Joe Rogan did. But
Mill.
Yeah, it's some good money, and obviously podcasts have a future. I think that you guys should write down some of the musicals we suggest and give them a listen. Even if you're not a musical fan, you might find something in there that you like. Even I find stuff in the world of hip hop, even though I'm not a hip hop person, that I enjoy from time to time. Like, do you know Big Boy, B.O.I.? Have you heard about him at all?
Oh, yeah.
So he's got that song All Night. I love it.
There you go.
Probably because it's got some ragtime piano in it. So sit back, relax, enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World, where we talk about musicals because they're so fun to watch. Cha cha cha.
JJ Meets World.
Brent Brandt, welcome back to JJ Meets World. It's been a minute since you were last on this show. How's life treating you?
Life is treating me good. What number was I at the beginning? I was early, wasn't I?
Yeah, I think you were number 7. You were in the first 10.
I will never forget the title of Brent's episode is Brent Brandt Does Not Microwave His Meat.
That is very funny since I've never cooked meat. I was a vegetarian for 16 years, and I still, and I'm not anymore, but I still don't ever cook meat. I very seldom eat meat, to be honest, and when I do, I actually microwave it.
So you're saying that title was a lie?
It was very funny.
Well, we invited Brent onto this episode because I needed an expert in musicals to go down the Great White Way with me. And Tucker,
I couldn't help you at all with this.
Yeah, I appreciate Tucker's background in theater, but musical theater is definitely not his forte. But Brent is maybe the biggest fan of musicals I have ever met in my entire life. And he has such a deep bench of shows he's seen and appreciation. Could you ever imagine going to New York City and not catching a show, Brent?
I couldn't imagine going to New York City and not catching 6 shows. No, it's one of my favorite things to do is to go to New York. I try to make 2 big trips a year. I try to go to Mexico with my honey every year, and I try to go to New York City either with my honey and or my kids once or twice a year. So yeah, no, New York's a great place to go. I love seeing plays and musicals in New York and doing other things as well. But that's the main thing I like to do in New York is seeing some musicals.
Well, just like jazz, the American musical is a piece of or a type of theater that is unique to the United States in that we kind of cultivated it. I wouldn't say we created it because they've been using music in theater for a long time, but the musical that we know and appreciate today is definitely, an American influenced art form. And it's been big. I mean, people who don't think that musicals are that big of a deal don't understand the fact that they're generating billions of dollars in profit every year. They were the go-to for Hollywood for decades when they wanted to release a new picture, and they've created some of the most enduring stars of all time. I'm thinking of everyone from your Gene Kelly all the way up to my always crush in theater, Sutton Foster. And you said that you had a Sutton Foster story, or you saw her in something, Brent?
Well, I have a Sutton Foster signed Anything Goes poster. When your birthday comes around, JJ, you and I might have to get together. Baby. Who knows? I didn't know you had such a big Sutton Foster crush. I mean, I do as well, but she's amazing. Yeah.
Do you ever watch her television show on TV Land?
I have it younger, right?
Yep, it's really good. I like it.
I haven't. It's good. I love her. She's amazing. I need to check that show out for sure. Yeah, I've heard good things.
Well, I asked Brent to come up with some of his favorite musicals, so we can kind of talk about which is which. And I would like to actually start. Speaking of Sutton Foster, and I haven't had a chance to see this show, but I have watched every clip that's possible from making of and behind the scenes all the way up to the Tony Awards performance. But she was in the play or the musical Violet recently, and it was a revival. And the premise of the show, I think, is incredibly powerful, which is a girl who is in an accident as a young person. It has a horrible scar on her face. She's pretty much been disfigured. And she decides to get on a bus and go to a tent revival where a minister says that he can heal. And so her journey takes her on this bus. She's leaving the town she's never left before. It's set like in the early 1950s. It talks about the people she encounters on the way. And one of the most interesting things about the revival of Violet, other than the fact that Sutton Foster kills it in the lead role, is they opted not to do any makeup effects for it. So you gauge what her face is supposed to look like by the reaction of every other character who comes into contact with her. And, just like seeing only the fin, let's say in Jaws, your imagination is going to do a far better job in filling that out than you would ever see from a makeup effect. And I found that to be such a cool, unique take on this. And then the music in Violet is just fantastic. It's got, a lot of Southern influences. I feel like someone who knows Nashville very well made the music for it. And the song I highlight from it is On My Way, which is the story of her. She's on her way to this tent revival, and it's some of the people she meets on the bus. She meets an old woman who's moving in with her son who has 4 boys, and she doesn't want to be a grandma. And then she meets a couple of guys who are on leave, and then there's the bus driver. I think it's just a very powerful movie, and it deals with religion. It deals with what faith is outside of religion. It deals with other people. I love it. I love every minute of it. The whole show itself, I think, is just wonderful, and it's a great example of the revival. And Hollywood reboots series all the time, and nobody ever talks about how Broadway has been doing this for a lot longer, and quite frankly, they've been doing it a lot better when it comes to reboots and remounting everything from musicals to plays to one acts to one person shows. I love it. Brent, give me a musical that you love.
Like a movie musical or a Broadway musical?
Whatever you like, buddy.
Well, if I'm thinking about musicals on Broadway, Hamilton obviously is right there at the top of anything you'd ever want to see. But I like Once a lot. Oh, American Idiot is special to me. The producers, I think, is brilliant. Kinky Boots is amazing. Mm-hmm. I had the chance to see Billy Porter, who won the Tony in Kinky Boots. I got lucky enough to see him twice, and that was one of the best performances I've ever seen by an actor. Billy Porter was just amazing. There's a filmed version of Kinky Boots that you can watch. You can stream it online somewhere, but it's the West End version, which is fine. The guy is fine, but he's no Billy Porter. Billy Porter was just amazing. I was lucky enough to see Hedwig with Neil Patrick Harris. He won the Tony as well, so that was a fantastic performance by him. And Lena Hall won the Tony as well in that show. So that was one of my most memorable shows I've seen on Broadway. But Hamilton, man, I know you saw Hamilton as well, but I was lucky enough to see the original Broadway cast in previews, and it was fantastic. I remember going to Hamilton. Well, my story was I couldn't get tickets. It wasn't crazy busy. It was in previews, and it was a popular show, but it certainly wasn't the phenomenon that it became. I was out there with Christy. She was at a court reporting conference, and I wanted to go see Hamilton, so she was busy doing her stuff. And every day I would go to the theater and try to get a ticket, and it was, sorry, sold out, sorry, sold out, sorry, sold out. Finally, on our last day, we were leaving on Sunday. On Saturday, I went to the theater, and the gentleman at the box office, he had held a ticket for me. A family member of the cast returned a ticket. So I got a ticket. I paid $110. I was in the 6th row, right in the center. I hadn't seen a clip of the show. I knew no songs from the show. Other than I knew who Lynn was from In the Heights, but other than that, I really didn't know anybody in the show. And it started, and it blew me away. I was just floored by how amazing that cast was, how new and modern that show was, how exciting it was. And I was just trying to remember everything. I was trying to, there's no soundtrack. I didn't even get, the program had no song list in it because they were still working on the order or whatever. So I was trying to remember lyrics from the songs, and I was trying to remember what people were doing during songs. And the first act is done, and they win the war, and I think, well, gosh, is this done? Oh wait, no, there's a second act, and then the second act starts, and David Diggs, who played this Frenchman the whole first act, all of a sudden he comes out and he starts this thing as Jefferson, and I'm like, who is this guy? It blew me away. It was crazy.
So I have a similar Hamilton story. So I had decided for the first time ever that I wasn't going to listen to any of the music before I saw the show, because by the time I had started hearing about it, this show had, it was making a cultural impact, right? Like Barack Obama is talking about how he has the remix on his Spotify playlist. And so I decided I'm going to wait. Well, they did not launch a touring company right away. Like, usually you get a big hit show like that and you put it on the road ASAP. And this one did a unique thing where it opened up casts in other towns. So you had the Chicago cast, you had a LA cast, and I proposed to my wife on July 6th, 2018, and I had planned for her family and then my friends and my family to fly out to Chicago, and we were going to surprise her at a restaurant, and I would propose. And everything went over really well. Well, I also spent well over $1,000 to score 5 tickets to Hamilton in Chicago, last row from the back of the balcony. And so I was almost more excited for the musical than I was for the proposal. Because I told her, I was like, hey, everyone's here. We're going to get married. And guess what? I also got tickets to Hamilton. So we go and see the show. And what was difficult for me is I don't listen to a lot of hip hop, certainly not a lot of rap in my day. I've always been an older soul. Give me Edison Lighthouse any day. And I was lost for the first third of that show because I had to train my ear into how to hear it. And I think to myself, like, God, if I just would have listened to this show in advance, I wouldn't have been as lost as I was going into it. But I was floored. Hamilton is another great example of, you know what doesn't get enough acclaim in that show is the set design. It is the same set throughout the entire show, and it's got modular pieces which make transitions so much easier. It keeps the show flowing. I think that one of the hardest parts is when I see a show that has long set changes or things don't happen very organically. I think that to me that happens with Wicked quite a bit, where there's all of these transition scenes where you're going into the classroom and now you're under the bridge, and it takes me out of it for that moment. And I learned that from a previous guest, Dave Wilhelmy, who is on the show, who has been a technical director for theater for many, many years. The faster you can do a transition and get people back into the story, back into the music, the easier it is going to be.
Well, I think I totally agree with what you're saying, and I have all these memories of seeing set pieces that are wheeled in and making all this noise, and from different productions. But yeah, Hamilton's round turntable and the choreography of bringing things in, even just chairs. A chair is not just brought in normally; it's brought in, raised up, and brought down slowly, just to make everything look so interesting. Yeah, but the future of sets is Mean Girls, and I know you saw Mean Girls, as did I. Just the LED sets, like you're in Africa, and then in 1 second you're in a school, just because that whole set is a big video screen that just swipes and you're in a new set. That's amazing.
Mean Girls blew me away in that set transition. So if you haven't seen it, the background where you would normally see flats and simple set pieces painted is instead these giant video screens that seamlessly work together. And so what I think is most unique about that is the musical takes place over one academic year at a high school. And so they change parts of the background. So you're in the cafeteria 4 times, but each time you're in the cafeteria, the posters that are on the bulletin board change, or there's a pumpkin, like someone has taped like a picture of a pumpkin up onto the restroom wall saying Happy Halloween. And then they incorporate it into some of the songs. I think of like Revenge Party, where they've got fake balloons and there's a head bouncing around. It is just so cool. And the only thing I can think of that reminds me of it is in one version of Pippin, when they're singing the song with Pippin's grandmother, they provided like a bouncing ball so that the whole crowd could sing along with 1 point. And I remember seeing video added in at that time and being like, whoa, that's amazing. Nothing on Mean Girls. Nothing on what Mean Girls did and does.
The first time I thought I really was impressed by that was I saw Les Mis and the tunnel sequence when he goes down in the tunnel. That was all video, and it was moving as they were moving beneath the street. That was amazing. So then that blew me away, but nothing like Mean Girls. That was fantastic. And Mean Girls didn't win a Tony for that. That was crazy. That was amazing. That when I saw Mean Girls the first time, again, I saw it in previews. Again, I had no idea what the songs were, no set list in the program, and those songs blew away. And I was so excited to go back again and bring other people to that show. And that disappointed me. That didn't win anything.
Well, we've talked about Mean Girls now, and you mentioned once right now, Broadway is looking to Hollywood to adapt Hollywood movies into musicals. So it's the exact flip of what it was in the 1950s. And there are a lot of shows that have been adapted from current movies that I think are really good. You mentioned Once, which I thought was one of the best movies that came out that year and had so much heart and was so emotional. And I thought, oh, the musical will never nail this the way that the movie did. And I was wrong, because that adaptation is so good.
I agree that the movie was great, and the musical is just amazing. It makes me cry every time I see it. I've seen Broadway productions, and I saw a production in Minneapolis, Theater La Ciudad, and I went to that twice, maybe 3 times. I thought that was just an amazing show. That once just it touches me. It's a great show.
You know what else? When I was a senior in high school, my senior summer, Trollwood Performing Arts School did Footloose.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, oh, God, why are you doing Footloose? And this was just at a time when they were just barely starting to scratch the surface of adapting movies into stage shows. And I love the Footloose stage show. It gives me everything that I want and then a little bit more. I think it is just phenomenal. And part of my love of musicals is I love some of the cheesy qualities. I love some of the fact that some of these things are supposed to look a little shoddy, and they're supposed to sound a little, a little corny and a little over the top. And I really, really like it. In fact, once a year, I post on my social media, what's something you think that should be adapted into a musical? And this last year I had a couple of great suggestions, one of them being Caddyshack.
That would be fun.
Right? Wouldn't a Caddyshack musical be a ton of fun? And then, so another adaptation of a musical or a movie into a musical, The Wedding Singer, I think is a great musical. And I believe the guy who originated the role on Broadway is Jonathan Lynch, who was already known for these comedic songs. He does things like R.E. Your Brains, and it's about a guy in an office who's a zombie who's trying to eat his coworker. My IKEA Girlfriend. So he had already had this comedic timing, and he was a great singer to boot. I think it's great. You know who I'm surprised is not doing musicals right now are the guys from Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah, that they certainly could do it. Yeah, they had episodes that seemed like they were a complete musical. Yeah.
Yeah. And, even if they were in a show, I would love to see those two, kind of play off of each other and riff a little bit in a musical. I think it would be a lot of fun. You also mentioned the Producers. I remember the Producers being the first show that fought back against ticket scalpers, and they set a precedent for what became touring companies, what became concerts, where instead of letting scalpers buy the ticket for the regular price and then turn around and sell it for 5 times the value because you can't get a ticket to the show, they just sold the ticket for 5 times the value at the box office. So they were asking $400 a ticket. And of course, this is almost 24 years ago. And oofta, I understand that they have to hold a threshold because they're going to combat it. But I did find that unique. Now, today, by today's standards, a $400 ticket is not insane. I think a lot of people have probably paid that. I'm sure you have, Brent, at least once.
Yeah, I need to tell you what, after I saw Hamilton by myself, and then I had to, of course, take Nick and Gabby. I'd hate to tell you what I paid for those tickets. I used to have 3 children, but I sold one of them to take the other 2. So.
Did you at least get good seats?
Yes, we did. We were in orchestra, maybe the 15th row on the aisle, on the outs, on the there's a big center section, and then there's two aisles. We were just off the house right, so stage left. Yeah, it was great seats. I remember when the lights went dark, I started crying. I was just so happy to have taken my kids to that show. It was fantastic. And then I had still the original cast, so they all come out, and Leslie Odom Jr. gets the applause when he starts, and Christopher Jackson and Jonathan Groff. Yeah, it was great. Daveed Diggs. I mean, seriously. And then Lynn. I mean, by the time he comes on and says, "My name is Alexander Hamilton," I mean, everybody's just going crazy, clapping before the show even really starts. So it's good memories. Yeah.
This whole conversation has been making me kind of rack my brain for what was the last time I saw a musical, either in the theater or in a movie or on TV. And I actually think the last one that I ever watched, I think, was The Nightman Cometh from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which has been cropping up lately in sort of the internet news again, because someone on Twitter tweeted at Rob McElhaney asking what he would have to do to get the rights to be able to stage a performance of The Nightman Cometh. And McElhaney's response was don't try to get the rights. Just do it. Just go ahead and do it. And then if anyone gives you a hassle, just reach out to me again. And I thought that was super cool. And don't be surprised if you see, as we're all coming out of the pandemic, some productions of The Nightman Cometh cropping up in towns across America.
There have been some nice things you can do online now. There's Broadway.com has been putting some shows out there that you can catch, and that's kind of cool. There's some stuff on Netflix too. I mean, speaking of Sutton Foster, you can watch Shrek the Musical. Her and Brian Darcy James. That's a great production that they filmed. You can watch on Netflix. Have you seen that, guys? JJ?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a great show.
So I saw the original cast of that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and I can tell you this much. Filming a stage musical can be really difficult. Trying to get the same feeling that you get at a live stage show while watching it is difficult. But I will give major kudos to a couple of musicals. Shrek, I think, is one that does it very, very well. And you can get a wonderful experience from watching it at home. And it actually, in my mind, makes you want to go see it somewhere live. Legally Blonde, MTV, when the Legally Blonde musical came out, they bought out a whole showing and they arranged to have it filmed, and they film it where there's cameramen on stage, there are people in the audience. It's just a very unique setup that they got for this particular one. And then the crowd is full of like early teenage girls, and so it almost feels more like a rock concert at times than it does a stage show. And
Newsies is another one. Newsies did a great job filming that with multiple cameras during multiple shows, edited together so you don't see the cameras. It feels like an experience. They're close-ups when close-ups are needed, and you get the medium shots when it's the big dance number. So no, there's a great Newsies out there as well.
The one that I watched is a ton of times as a kid, and I think I wore out the VHS tape we had of it, was Nonsense.
Oh, sure.
Are you familiar with that show, Brent?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So Nonsense, for those of you who've never heard about it, is a group of nuns who teach at a Catholic school who are putting on a one-night performance because most of their the nuns at their convent have died because of botulism, and they do not have the money to give them the proper burial. So it's a fundraiser, but the students at their school are also putting on the musical Grease. So they're on the set for Grease, and it's these women. It is one of easily the funniest shows I have ever seen. And if you're a Catholic, it is doubly great. I think that show is wonderful. And Clairol, the company that makes Hairspray, did a Clairol on Broadway series where they taped shows, and this was one of the ones they taped. And I noticed that one of the things that they do is they keep the lights on in the house during the whole time. And so because they interact with the audience a bunch, it's a wonderful show. Rue McCallaghan is in it, and she played Blanche on the Golden Girls. It's a wonderful show, and you can find that online, and it still looks good, with the exception of when they cut to the audience, you're like, oh, this was definitely filmed in 1994.
Yeah. I'm excited about the Hamilton that's going to be released on Disney Plus in July. I won't feel quite so special. I've been able to see Hamilton 4 times, so now I thought I was special, but now everybody will be able to see that original cast and in their privacy of their own home. It's a fantastic show. Everybody will have Disney Plus in July, right?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, if you canceled because of The Mandalorian, you're going to get it back because Hamilton's going to be on there. And, you know, I hear a couple things that I think are surprising to me. Number one, how did Disney Plus get the rights to the Hamilton stage show? Secondly, Disney Plus has really gloated a lot about how there is no profanity there. You know, they've taken all the nudity, all of these things off of it. There are a couple of moments in Hamilton where I'm wondering what they're going to do, if they're going to break their own rule or if they're going to try and do an edit of it.
Gabby and I were talking about that the other day. Yeah, if they're gonna edit Splash and Daryl Hannah's backside, are they going to take the F-bombs out of Hamilton? I mean, that changes it. Yeah, I don't know.
Are you saying there's no profanity at all in Disney Plus?
So there's nothing on Disney Plus that's above a PG-13, and they have been editing chunks. So, like, for example, Brent was mentioning in Splash, when Daryl Hannah walks back into the ocean, you see her bare butt. And what they did is they went in and digitally added longer hair so you couldn't see her rear end. And
but it doesn't look like hair. It looks like a big fur backside. It's weird.
It looks like she's wearing those furry breeches from that Raquel Welch, like 1 million years BC.
Yeah.
Because I think of my superhero movies, and those got a couple of curse words in them, but they're all PG-13. So, and it's even a plot point in Age of Ultron that Captain America accidentally swears. And so I wonder if they're going how deep they're going into that.
Can you get one F-bomb in a PG-13? Is that what the rule is?
I mean, it's happened before. I think, if I remember correctly, I think Armageddon has an F-bomb in it, and it's PG-13. It happens from time to time. But I think it's not necessarily as the amount. I think it kind of depends on whatever group of people they're using to come up with the rating that day. And it's more like the general feel of the whole thing. It's kind of my understanding is that it's a fairly arbitrary process when it comes to ratings, with a few exceptions. So yeah, I'm not quite. I think also too, is just as time progresses, even though we might not be getting F-bombs, we're getting a lot more racier material in younger and younger audience movies anyways. So it kind of conforms to, I guess, the culture at the time.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah. And here's the deal. Disney, I'm surprised that this is the one Disney went for. Like, why are we not seeing more of Disney's stage shows on Disney Plus? You know, why am I not able to watch recording of Tarzan or The Lion King?
Ooh, JJ, can you fill me in again on your thoughts on the Mary Poppins musical? Because I remember you telling me that it actually filled out the Mary Poppins backstory a bit more.
Oh yeah, without a doubt it does. So P.L. Travers, who wrote the books that Mary Poppins is based on, it's not even a secret in Hollywood anymore. They've made movies about it, about how much she disliked the Disneyfication of her books. She didn't want to give the rights over. It turns out she needed money, and so she chose to, finally give up the ghost on it. But Saving Mr. Banks is a great movie where Tom Hanks plays Walt Disney, and you get to see that struggle to make Mary Poppins. It's amazing to think of the woman who created Mary Poppins hated the movie because the movie is so beloved and is such, you talk about a movie musical, that one sets the bar. So Cameron McIntosh, who'd been working with Disney Productions on stage plays, wants to make a Mary Poppins musical on the stage. Of course, why wouldn't you? Well, P.L. Travers lived to be well into her 90s. I mean, she was an older lady when the movie was made, but she's still alive and she still holds the rights to being able to adapt it to the stage. And so she was a part of the process. And one of the pieces that they needed to add into the musical to get her to say yes is she wanted to flesh out what was going on in some of these characters. And so in the Mary Poppins stage musical, you get a character named Miss Andrews, and Miss Andrews was Mr. Banks's, the father, was his nanny growing up, and a horrific woman who believes children should be seen and not heard, and most of the time not even seen. She uses cod liver oil as a punishment. Just a nasty, nasty woman, and she comes into the show, and so she was a character who was in the books, and to show that you kind of understand where he comes from a little bit more. And the wife, instead of being a suffragette, is a woman who's desperately in the shadow of her husband. She's Mrs. George Banks, and she doesn't get to have a personality of her own, and so she's fighting for individuality. There are other incredibly scary sequences, like where the toys hold Jane and Michael hostage and put them on trial for destroying another one of the toys. It's much closer to what the books are, with the exception of, like, in the books, Mary Poppins breaks off her fingers at one point and gives them to the kids, and they turn into shortbread cookies. There's some truly horrific things that take place in the book, but the musical, to me, if you like the Mary Poppins movie, the stage show is just amazing. My sister and I saw it in the original West End company, and when Mary flies overhead, and she flies overhead right over the audience. And Chrissy and I were in like the fourth row, and I looked over at my sister, and she was just openly weeping because it was you're watching magic. You're watching magic take place right in front of you, and it is such a moving moment. And I think anyone who does a show on stage is hoping for that, but man, they knocked it out of the park with the Mary Poppins musical. In fact, I think most of Disney's stage shows utilize a lot of great special effects. They understand what an audience wants. They all seem to be perfectly timed. I've seen The Lion King 4 times now, and each time I'm not ashamed to say I cry during the opening sequence, because it takes you over, watching the sunrise on stage and seeing these gigantic puppets with human beings walking down. I mean,
just the beginning when they're coming in, all those animals coming down the aisles is amazing.
It's so moving, so incredible. And
I was so excited to see Frozen. Frozen was on tour. I didn't get the chance to see it on Broadway, and I know you were going with me, JJ. We were going to see Frozen, and that whole sequence of the dress change, and that got postponed, obviously, with COVID. But I'm excited to see that down the road.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Now, okay, so Brent, let me ask you this. Tell me a show that everyone else loves that you just can't get behind.
Oh.
Is there one that people rave about and you're just like, not me?
Nothing comes to mind, to be honest. I've seen so many high school productions. You're talking about Footloose. I saw a high school production of Footloose. It was bad. But I still walked away going, boy, those kids tried hard. That was some fun music. I try to find the good in things when I go to a show. So there's not I honestly don't know a show that I've walked out disappointed sometimes. And my bar was pretty high, but I don't think I've ever walked out of a show going, boy, I hated it. I'll tell you one. I went to Fun Home. I went to Fun Home in New York. Let's see, when did I go? 2015. Michael Cera won the Tony. I was all excited to see it. It was in the round. Set pieces were coming out of the floor, up and down. That was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. The little girl was nominated for a Tony, although I had to stand in that day, so I didn't get to see her. So that was a little disappointing. But I just didn't get into it. I just didn't get into the show. It didn't move me. In fact, I didn't even stage door. One of my favorite things after a Broadway show is to stage door and say hi and maybe take a picture with like going back to Hamilton, I got to take pictures with everybody in the cast that first time I saw it because there wasn't a huge crowd outside. So I love to stage door, but I didn't even stage door at Fun Home because I was kind of disappointed. I didn't hate it, but I was disappointed. But when I saw the tour of it I went in Minneapolis, and it wasn't in the round. I don't know if that changed it much, but we were on the pit seats. We were up front because the band is on stage. So we were right up front, not the original Broadway cast, obviously, but I cried. I was so moved by it. It went from a show that I really wasn't even excited to see again to like one of my favorites. It was amazing. So, I don't know. It's just some days you maybe just are let down a little bit. But is there a show that you really can't get behind, although other people like?
Yep. I cannot get behind Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, it's not one of my favorites. I've seen it several times. In fact, Christy and I saw it in New York a few years ago. And it was like we were going afterwards. We went, gosh, we should have saw something else because it can be long. There are some boring moments, but it is still Phantom. So everybody should see it.
And see, that's the thing, right? So when I finally saw Phantom of the Opera, there were things that impressed me, like the chandelier that falls. Is the stagecraft of it is really, really awesome for 1987. And so the fact you're not updating this to the way it should be, and also like it's a costume show. It's all about watching someone in these elaborate costumes, and you've got these songs, and they've got a weird synth backing to them, and there are shows that when you revive them, you should take the time to really say, okay, does this appeal to an audience, a current audience? Because a lot of times they'll just kind of throw something up there. And I think the shows that play on nostalgia do a really great job. So, for example, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. The last time they revived that, they really made a point to say, like, hey, man, if you like the 1960s, it's like the 1960s are alive and well. And they did all these, amazing color combinations. And they really made a point to make it look like you were back in the 1960s, which I appreciate because that's what you're going for in the show. But if you're just going to revive something, it's there. Now, the show that I hate is We Will Rock You. I think that the show itself is just garbage. And I can't.
It's cheesy. Did you see it at Blue Stem? Is that the time you saw it?
No, I also saw it in Las Vegas.
Oh.
I also have kind of a bitterness because at one point I was working on an adaptation of Queen songs to be made into a musical, and then I found out that this thing existed.
You're mad because they beat you to the punch.
Yep, exactly. And they didn't do that good of a job, in my opinion.
It's pretty cheesy. Yeah.
JJ, there's always that Jetsons musical you can make.
Oh, I would be so good. Actually, here's what I'm really surprised at. With the success of Shrek on Broadway, with the success of like Frozen on Broadway, I am surprised that someone like Hanna-Barbera hasn't tried to launch a Flintstones musical. I'm surprised that they haven't tried to put something like that on stage.
They're still trying to make up for the Flintstones movie, all the money they lost, right?
Well, on the second one. The first one was a huge success. But the second one, Viva Rock Vegas.
Vegas.
Yeah.
Did that go straight to video, or was?
No, I saw that in the theaters.
Okay.
Yeah. Poor Mark Addy. It was like his follow-up to the Full Monty. And he's like, I'm going to play Fred Flintstone. Really? Who's going to be your Barney? One of the Baldwins. Alec? No.
Did anyone from the first movie carry over to Viva?
Yes. Let's see. Rosie O'Donnell did the voice of an octopus.
Oh, she couldn't come back. Wow.
I think that's it. Well, and then, another Broadway star, Alan Cumming, was in Viva Rock Vegas playing the Great Gazoo. Oh, it was bad.
Oh, Alan. How many, what musicals can you name that came from TV shows?
Musicals that came from TV shows. Oh, that's a good question.
I'll give you the only two that probably are out there. Addams Family, which is a great musical, and SpongeBob SquarePants, which is fantastic. When I saw SpongeBob, I thought this is going to be the new Lion King. It's got everything. It's got fun songs. It's got these big set pieces. It's full of color and excitement, and it kind of bombed on Broadway. Although there is a film version of it that Nickelodeon put out, and you should watch it. It's a lot of fun. Have you seen it?
I saw the Nickelodeon, the one that they aired. And it was a lot of fun, and it's unique because it's a collaboration musical where they took all of these bands and they let all of these bands write songs for it.
So the songs are all different. They all have a different flair to them. Soundtrack's great. And Ethan Slater played SpongeBob, and he's all over that set, climbing and singing and having. And you know who he lost to Tony to?
Who?
Tony Shalhoub.
Oh, for the band's visit?
For the band's visit. I love Tony Shalhoub, but he did not deserve that. I've seen the band visit. He sings one song.
Yeah, but he's Monk.
Everybody loves Monk, yeah, but Ethan Slater deserved that.
I think that maybe SpongeBob came too late because the SpongeBob phenomenon has died down.
No, you're right. The kids who were excited about it now are poor college students and couldn't afford tickets. So I hear you. That's right for picking. So we could write some musicals.
Oh yeah, I mean,
based on TV shows.
I mean, if I was going to adapt a television show into a musical, first of all, you could write a Friends musical, and people would give their arm and leg to go see that thing. And you've already got some songs because Phoebe had like Smelly Cat, and stuff like that.
There actually is I forgot about that. Christy and I saw Friends the musical in New York. It was off Broadway. It's a parody show. You know, one of those There's an Office one as well. Office musical, and I think there's a Gilligan's Island the musical. Those off Broadway things.
What I think would absolutely crush would be a Simpsons musical.
Oh yeah,
that would absolutely crush. Like that would sell even now. Even though Simpsons is not even nearly as popular as they once were, they're so deeply embedded in the subconscious of the pop culture that I think you could probably maybe even give them a comeback with a musical.
I want to have a whole show and talk about Mr. Burns and Electric Tail Tucker.
Oh, so that is a fantastic show. Now, I've never seen the show, but I've read the script a couple of times now. It's a show I really want to actually mount at some point. It's not a traditional musical, but for those of you who haven't heard of it, Mr. Burns' Post-Electric play, it's this fantastic concept. It's a play in 3 acts. And the first act is a number of years after basically the apocalypse has happened. So you never really know what it is that happened, but the world is sort of a barren nuclear fallout wasteland, and small groups of humans have got their camps, and they're fighting with each other and trying to survive. And the first act, you see this group of humans to entertain themselves because there's no electricity, so there's no internet, there's no television. They try to reenact an episode of The Simpsons. It might be the one where Mr. Burns gets shot, but I can't remember exactly.
They're talking about different TV shows. I saw it at the Guthrie, actually.
Okay.
So the first act, they're just talking about different TV. They're sitting around the campfire and they're just talking about different TV shows, and they start talking about The Simpsons, and it's the episode called Cape Fear. Nick and I saw it, and the first act starts, and it's fine. We're loving it because we remember that Cape Fear episode was based on the movie Cape Fear.
Yep,
where,
it's a great episode.
Krusty the Clown gets released from prison, like Robert De Niro gets released from prison, and he's going on a revenge against Bart. And there's so many gray hairs in the audience that have no clue what they're talking about. If you didn't know that, if you didn't know the Simpsons episode, or if you didn't know the Cape Fear movie, you're kind of lost. And so there were some people that were lost. And then it's a 3 acts. After the first act, a bunch of people left. And then after the second act, a bunch of more people left. And the third act it's whacked, man. The group was so popular that they become like a religion. It's like the whole planet but the episode has gotten involved in this whole crazy thing that's not even close to being the same. There was nobody left. It was Nick and I and a few other stragglers. It was crazy.
Now I'm trying to remember specifically the episode, the Cape Fear episode of The Simpsons. Is that the episode where Homer keeps trying to scare Bart when he's sleeping at night?
It sure is.
Like, Bart, do you want a brownie?
Yeah. Look at my new hockey mask.
Yeah, it's great.
I never did see, I mean, this popped up on my radar because I'm a superhero kid. I never did see or listen to Spider-Man the musical. I didn't hear or see anything good about it either. But that was definitely one of those things where they thought, well, let's try to get those indoor kids that don't go to musicals that like Spider-Man. Let's try to get them to come in. Is that why, you guys, that we're seeing all of these major musicals being built off of movie properties because they're trying to capture an audience that they think wouldn't go see a musical otherwise?
I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to stretch the property that you own the rights to as far as possible. So there's a reason why you see Spider-Man themed garden hoses. That has nothing to do with Spider-Man, but you own the license and it involves home renovation and home products. And so you're going to slap a Spider-Man on it just on the off chance that someone's great aunt will be like, Danny loves the Spider-Mans, and we'll pick that up for them. I think, one of the big problems is just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
Right. Just like Malcolm said in Jurassic Park.
Right, exactly. So
yeah, there's a ghost musical that's not so good. There's a Dirty Dancing musical that's not so good. I mean, almost pointless.
There's so many things where they try, and so I saw the Bring It On musical, and my thought was like, oh, okay, so I'll get to watch Bring It on stage, and they'll bring in some of the music, that was popular at the time, like Hey Mickey. And it's not. It's an entirely different story. It's almost they're like, well, we couldn't raise the money to do a sequel movie, so we'll just do this Broadway show. I also think that, so you take like Spider-Man Into the Darkness, Into the Darkness,
Into the Dark, yeah.
It is, it is so incredibly tech heavy that it's almost like they were trying to give you a movie experience on stage. And I told a couple of my friends who are going to go see the show which is when you go to Universal Studios in Florida or LA, they have a Spider-Man musical experience, and you get seated in a theater, and it's supposed to be a lab, and Peter Parker gets bit and he transforms into Spider-Man and he has to fight the Green Goblin, and it lasts about 25 minutes, and it's like a bunch of great 80s songs like I Need a Hero that Mary Jane sings, and it is wonderful and it's entertaining and it's included with your ticket price. So why not just go to that rather than having to sit through 20 minutes of, sorry folks, we're gonna have to pause the show, the wire work, blah 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 blah. And I understand that so there's a King Kong musical that people have been talking about for a long time that was just in previews, I think, on Broadway, that I don't think is going to reopen after the pandemic because here's the problem with a musical. It is never going to recoup its money as fast as a movie does because you only can fit 500 people in that theater for every single showing versus having 1,000 screens at 400 people per screen who can watch it 20 times in a day. So when someone like Universal gets into the musical game, which they did with Wicked, what I think they're doing is they're trying to put together a stage show that they can eventually turn into a movie, because that's where the real money is going to end up being for them. Because think about that. Once you make a movie, even though it's 10 times the cost of making putting up a musical, the cost stops because you've already paid your actors. Well, every time you do a musical, you're paying that actor, you're paying a stagehand, you're paying the usher, you're renting the theater. And so it's a very costly medium. And I think that one major aspect of musicals is I don't think that Broadway is going to be I don't think it's going to be the venue that it once was, especially post pandemic. I think you're going to see more shows that have a Chicago company. And instead of calling it an out of town tour, you're calling it, nope, it's the Chicago, it's premiering here. Not the Chicago premiere, but it's premiering here. And we're going to see a major change when it comes to stage musicals in the next era. My opinion.
Well, the movies that have been released that are musicals have all done well. So I agree. Well, The Prom is a good example. The Prom closed on Broadway, and they went right into shooting the movie version of it. So that's something to look forward to. And what else? In the Heights is coming out. We're able to see that. Of course, the Hamilton. There's something else. Oh, Spielberg's West Side Story. That's coming out.
I'm worried that movie's not going to be very good because we haven't seen a trailer to it. And you would think that would be an easy movie to get a lot of interest peaked.
Why? Have you ever seen a Spielberg movie that wasn't good?
Oh,
Why do you say that?
Warhorse.
Oh, Warhorse was good. What are you talking about?
No, it wasn't. Did you ever? Okay, so Warhorse based on the play. The play had all of this great emotion. It was wonderful. The movie itself made me go like, oh my God, either kill the horse or kill the boy, but one of them's got to die.
Would you have been happier with a puppet horse in the movie?
I think I would have. I honestly, I truly think I would have, because I think you would have gotten more emotion out of it. But I'm not a horse fan. So,
what movies do you want to see from musicals?
Also, 1941, even though it's filled with all of my favorite performers from Second City, and it's a John Candy movie. That movie was garbage. And that was his third movie.
That was a long time ago.
Let us not forget Indiana Jones, The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Damn straight. So
yeah, nuke the fridge.
Brent, are you going to tell us that you like Crystal Skull?
No, I'm not going to tell you. Although, the funny thing is, we all look at that nuke the fridge scene thinking, "Oh my God, he went over the top." But when you look at Raiders, there's some stuff that's over the top, and then certainly Temple of Doom, pulling out a heart, watching it beat in front of you.
It's not about over the top. It's about, is that dumb or not?
It's dumb. It's dumb.
And I mean, not only does he come out of the fridge, doesn't he see like a gopher that then runs away or something like that? I feel like there's a CG gopher that's really dumb in that movie at some point. Here's the thing, not to get us off of musicals, but the thing about Crystal Skull, I hated that movie from the get-go, because they start and you're like, okay, it's the 50s, and then there are these guys and they look like Russians because they always cast these square-jawed guys to play Russians, and then they pull up to this base where they kill some American soldiers, and then all these guys that are speaking Russian start running out everywhere, and then there's like Russian commands, and you're like, oh, this is the Cold War, these are Russians. And then they open a trunk and Indiana Jones comes out and it pans up to his face, and what is the first thing he says? Russians. Like, we needed him to tell us that. So that movie is full of stuff like that.
Hey, let's talk about maybe one of the biggest missteps in musicals in the last 25 years, which is, and I never would have thought about it if Tucker and I hadn't found a way to dump on Steven Spielberg for a little bit. There is one musical that I feel got people who would never go see a stage show, certainly never go see a musical, go see the same show more than once, and that was Jersey Boys, because Jersey Boys touched a nerve with people who never would have gone to a musical, and they went to it and they were amazed by it. I mean, Brent, do you remember people talking about how amazing they thought Jersey Boys the show was?
Oh, I've gone to Jersey Boys many times with friends and family in Minneapolis, and then it played at the Fargo Dome, and I've gone with different friends and got great seats, and everybody's hugging me afterwards. Oh, this was the best thing I ever saw, because it's the first musical they ever saw, or they haven't seen one in 40 years. So yeah, no, that touched a nerve. That was some great music. People that were growing up during that time, or have memories of listening to that music. It's special to them. So that's a show that just will continue on. It's going to play in Vegas forever. It's going to tour forever. That's a great. It's still playing off Broadway. So
I think Chicago still has a permanent cast at the Cadillac Palace now. They decide to turn that into a movie, which should have been a giant, huge, amazing hit. And I left that theater angry at how poorly done I thought the adaptation was. And that was Clint Eastwood, I think, right? Who directed that?
Yeah, that was Clint's kind of lost his touch for sure. That could have been another just like Shrek filmed stage version, done it right. That would have been great. But no, that wasn't. That was a disappointing movie. You're right. You're right.
I can think of only one musical I've seen with Tucker. Do you remember what musical it was, Tucker?
Oh yeah, Avenue Q,
yep,
which
for
was
your 21st birthday.
And that was a blast and a half. We saw that was it at the Wynn?
At the Wynn in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that blew me away for sure.
That's a musical that should be filmed and made into a movie. That would be great.
I think so too. And I actually think you could probably get the people at Henson to get behind it too. It's such a loving homage to what they do. And I've never seen an official statement from Brian Henson, but I have to imagine he really likes it. In fact, he's probably pissed that they beat him to the punch on it.
Maybe.
Are there any Muppets musicals, JJ, like of the Muppets?
Well, I mean, almost all of their movies are musicals, and they do a wonderful job with like the musical numbers in those. So
yeah,
when you watch The Muppets Take Manhattan, it's built to be like a Broadway show where you've got your opening number, and it starts like with a little bit of orchestration and then into a whistle. They have done a couple Muppet stage shows, and as of recently, the Electric Mayhem have actually gone out and done some gigs. So I think they were at there was like a San Francisco music festival a couple of years ago, and you can watch the Electric Mayhem play live, and it's very unique. It's very cool. I know for a while they were working on a stage show. They did a couple things in Britain. I just think the problem is it's difficult, right? Because you can't do any big dance numbers because unless you have human beings doing the tap dancing, and at that time you're like, well, where the hell is Fozzie?
Right. Well, there is though in the theatrical tradition where puppetry happens, where you've got puppeteers who are dressed all in black, who will then be behind them. I was thinking of things like, Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy riding bicycles in the park, recreating things like that. You guys have mentioned a couple of times in this show musicals that make you cry. And I know for a fact that if I saw a musical with Kermit the Frog and Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, and a bunch of other Henson Muppets, I would cry immediately. I mean, I had the opportunity to see the I Am Big Bird documentary in Toronto a couple years before it got released, and I was there with Greg Carlson and Katie Smith, and Carol Spinney, rest in peace, was there with his wife, and he came on stage afterwards, and he brought Oscar the Grouch with him, who took questions from the audience. And I was a 4-year-old again. Like it immediately transported me back to my childhood, and I could not stop the tears from coming. And so I just know that if I ever saw, they've probably done stuff like Muppets on Ice or something like that before, but if they did like an actual, Muppets musical that included the whole, Jim Henson pantheon of shared universe Muppets, that would hit me in the feels right away.
Oh, stranger things have happened. So, I mean, I think we would all love that. And maybe that's what the part of the future of the Muppets is. I think that there's a lot of different brands that would love to get themselves into something like that, because the emotional core that you get watching a live performance is just so much more powerful than watching that recorded one. Okay, so as we're getting close to wrapping this up, I've got a couple of quick last questions for Brent. Brent, number one, other shows that you think are great that are not getting any attention at all. You can list anything that you love that for some reason have just not caught the attention of everybody.
That's a great question. I want people to know about Come From Away. Come From Away is in my top 5 musicals of all time. I think people know about it because it's still playing on Broadway. It won the Tony, so people are certainly aware of it. But it's supposed to be playing in Minneapolis in August, and people should go. If it gets delayed, they should find another time to go. That song, or that musical, first song, I'm crying. It's if you don't know about Come From Away, it's about 9/11 when we had to divert American planes out of American airspace, and they all had to land in a little town called Gander, Newfoundland. And this little town that hadn't had a lot of air traffic in a long time, all of a sudden had 7,000 people there that they had to take care of for days. And so it's a very small cast, and they play passengers on planes, they play people in the city, and the music is fantastic. The storyline is fantastic. It's just a great music. It's 90 minutes. One act. It's just a great show. I think everybody should see it. It's an amazing show. There's a show that's coming to Fargo that I saw on Broadway. Let me think here. Oh, Tuck Everlasting. It escaped my mind. Do you guys know about Tuck Everlasting?
Oh yeah, based off of the horse movie.
Yeah. So I think Fargo North is maybe doing it next year.
They sure are. I just saw the announcement for it.
I saw it on Broadway. It had a very short run, but that's a really really nice show that people should see. Yeah, I've seen some shows that had short runs. I saw American Psycho. I remember going to American Psycho based on the movie with Gabby, and Nick and my aunt had gone to a different show, and Gabby and I were blown away by American Psycho. And then at intermission, we went to see if there were tickets available for the next night because I knew Nick needed to see it. So at intermission, I bought tickets to go to it the next night again with Nick. Yeah, that was a fun show. Yeah, no, there's just lots of good stuff out there. Beetlejuice is, if you're going to New York anytime soon, and hopefully Beetlejuice is still playing. Beetlejuice is a lot of fun.
I think I saw
Hades Town.
Going to reopen Beetlejuice.
They're not, huh? They had to move theaters. They're not even going to reopen. That's too bad. Yeah, Beetlejuice was a lot of fun. Hopefully that tours. Yeah, the tour, Hades Town and Moulin Rouge were both on tour. You know, I need tours to open up again so we can go see some shows in Minneapolis. I saw the revival of Oklahoma. That was just it was the same script, but it was new and fresh, and you looked at it in a different light, and it was that was great. Yeah, isn't Broadway amazing? Aren't musicals just fun?
Oh, they're the best. I love them.
I got a question for you.
Oh yeah, okay.
We can't have a podcast without talking about Tobel, right? So give me 2 Stephen Tobolowsky musicals based on movies of his.
Sure. Well, Groundhog Day, right off the bat.
Yes.
Let me think. Okay, so they never did a Spaceballs musical, but you have to imagine that if Mel Brooks lives to 100, they'll do that.
That would be awesome.
I don't think they've done a Sneakers musical yet, but they should do one of those.
I agree.
Another one. There's no musical of Deadwood.
He played a teacher. He played a teacher.
Played a teacher.
He wasn't a very nice teacher either.
It's not Community, where he plays the teacher who has the class about who's the boss, the television show.
It wasn't the Goldbergs where he played the principal. No.
I don't know. I'm stumped.
Lindsay Lohan was in the movie.
Lindsay Lohan. Oh, Freaky Friday.
Yes. Freaky Friday.
How could I forget about Freaky Friday?
You didn't.
And, speaking of which, Tobo is another one of those guys who is just, like his Broadway career is just amazing. And talk about a guy who appreciates a live stage show. And I think it amazes to me that a guy who's got a history as rich as his and who could probably just be working in movies and TV all the time still makes time to be on stage and values that aspect. So I think that's very cool. People who should not be on stage, Zach Braff. Oh my God, I saw Bullets Over Broadway, and no wonder that show didn't find its footing, because he was not. Just because you're in a television show or a movie doesn't mean that you are supposed to be on stage, and certainly doesn't mean you're supposed to sing. So sorry about that, Zach Braff, if you're listening to this. I still love Garden State. Just make another movie for me, buddy.
But if he and his girlfriend were in a Broadway show coming up next year, we'd go, right?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
He's the luckiest man on the planet, right? Dating Florence Pugh?
Yep. I think, Brent, you and I are itching to go see a show. A couple of shows I would recommend if you ever get the chance to see them. Young Frankenstein, I think, is hilarious. It does a wonderful job recreating the movie. High Fidelity, I don't know why no one's done that as a show around Record Day, like Free Record Day.
It is a musical, you know that, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a wonderful musical.
And here's a great, I saw High Fidelity in Minneapolis at Electric Fetus. They did it inside a record store. It was fantastic. We were like customers in the record store. So we stood and the show just kind of evolved around us. It was really cool.
The one thing I will say is next time someone puts Oklahoma up, we don't need the Dream Ballet anymore. We've evolved. You don't need a 20-minute ballet sequence in the middle of Oklahoma in the corn stalks. It just doesn't play as well as it did back.
But the revival changed it. It was a modern dance, but really dark and a little twisted. With great lighting. Yeah, the ballet sequence disappeared. Yeah.
People forget, like, in that show, the lead, your main, swashbuckling, like, awesome male lead, tries to convince the villain to kill himself in a song. That show is as dark as it comes, and it always has.
Again, the revival, to emphasize what he says, the lights went out. It was pitch black. So all you could do is focus on his words as he's telling him to go hang himself.
Oh, my God. But the farmer and the cowman should be friends.
That's right.
Brent Brandt, you're always a pleasure to have on. Well, let's see. By this, your episode is in the 190s, so we'll invite you back, I guess, around episode 450. I think it'd be about.
Oh, right? Man, that's too long.
Well, that'll only probably be a couple months away at the rate we're putting out these episodes.
Maybe we can launch an all musical episode of JJ Meets World, and we can bring you in as a consultant.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love that.
I love it.
Brent, always a pleasure, and we'll catch up with you soon, my man.
Boys, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. I don't want to show off no more. I don't want to sing tunes no more. I don't want to ride moons no more. I don't want to show off. From the Drowsy Chaperone.